Good evening, everyone. Won't you please join us here for another exciting meeting of Duelists and Drunkards. Here are your two favorite podcast hosts. I'm Mr. Panda.
And I'm Rockstar.
This is the podcast where we go gay for Asians. We hope you've strapped in for another exciting evening with us because we're excited to get it on with you. First up is current events. We got our first preview of the new Joker movie featuring Joaquin Phoenix, the infamous actor of fame from M. Night Shyamalan films. And my personal favorite, Her, is going to be playing the Joker before he became the Joker. Rockstar has some thoughts about his unmasked appearance there on set.
I actually think the look is very stupid.
I'm excited! It's Joaquin Phoenix, the guy who played a crazy Roman emperor.
What he looks like is not what I'm saying he's going to act like. I just don't like the look of the Joker. I'm sure Joaquin Phoenix will amaze us with his acting ability, and I'll believe that's the Joker, but just based on looks, can't stand it. And I have no faith in the DC universe as of late, so kind of hard. You've got to raise the bar here for me. Very cynical.
Speaking of DC, they've recently announced that there will be a new DC streaming service coming out. Exclusive. I think they're calling it DC Universe.
And there's my point. Right there.
Speaking of being skeptical about things, yet another streaming service. To join the ranks of Crunchyroll, High Dive, and all the Netflix come-afters.
If you were hoping to watch Titans, apparently that's the debut there, and you're only going to be able to watch it on DC Universe, which is great, because if you like DC and Star Trek, now you have to have two streaming services to watch them. On top of Netflix.
On a more positive note, it's been recently announced that the 30th anniversary of My Neighbor Totoro being released back into theaters will also take place in China, making it the very first Studio Ghibli film to be released theatrically in China. So, bully for them.
Oh, that is actually good news.
In tech news, there has been a recent development in the courts when it comes to the relationship between internet service providers and media companies trying to track down piracy. Courts have ruled that ISPs can charge a reasonable amount of fee coverage to perform the work needed to track down customers who are performing piracy in Canada. What that means, and how that came about in the first place, was an ISP was requested by a media company to come up with several thousand customer information pieces for them to, process the takedown requests or the potential lawsuits and all that. And the ISP wanted to charge them $100 per hour to do that. And the media company has argued that that makes what they're doing too cost prohibitive to bother. So, hooray for piracy! Now, whether or not this will dramatically change how media companies pursue things up in Canada is up for debate, but it does very much change the dynamic of what ISPs might be able to do for consumer privacy. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see on that one.
I guess so.
Final note, a little tack on here. The Academy Awards has taken a step back from their decision to introduce the popular film category. It has not been completely killed, but they are putting it on a hold after significant backlash in social media. We're not sure exactly what the ultimate fate of that category will be, but they are going to continue to evaluate it, and it doesn't sound like it will be part of this year's awards. So, hooray for the Academy, but since you're all about reevaluating, may I make a suggestion? Have you considered a category for, I don't know, best trailer cut? One of the key marketing tools for bringing about a movie and bringing people into that movie experience. Does anyone remember Alien? Alien, with its brilliant trailer. How about this? How about an award for best scene within a movie? That might not even be done by the director, him or herself, but by one of the assistant directors. Or, like in Lord of War, where you have that entire sequence of the making of a bullet, which is done by a completely different person. That would be a cool award. Why don't you think about something like that instead of popular film?
That would be extremely interesting instead of popular film.
All of that has to do with movie craft and seems to me to be a little more relevant than trying to make a separate category for popular film. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's ways that they could still do the popular film category in a different way. Mm-hmm. Like one of those honorary awards.
Yeah.
They give those out all the time for different reasons. I mean, I could see them having an award for most popular film that's, perhaps more tied to box office performance and popularity. But I mean, it just seems going overboard to try to create an entire new submission category that might involve 5 or 10 films and judging it based on what compared to what. If your only metric for performance in a category is how much money it made, I mean, you don't even need the award in the first place. You have the record holder. He's like, oh, it made this much money this year.
Right. I have another interesting category to add. If things keep going the way it goes, there should be a best after credits cutscene.
So basically, it's the Marvel category.
Well, other movies have started doing it. Like apparently,
yeah,
Crazy Rich
dumb.
Asians.
It's dumb. It's so dumb. Please stop doing it.
And now shows have started doing it too. By the way, especially on Netflix.
It's acceptable within the Marvel Universe because the Marvel Universe isn't really a Marvel Universe thing anymore. It's a series. It's a series, so the preview for the next episode, that's fine. Other movies need to just stop doing it. Just stop. All right? We know that you might make another movie, but it has nothing. There's no surprise. Crazy Rich Asians. There's no surprise about what the second movie is going to be about, all right? They're not going to roll in with, a new, Filipino drug lord, and they're going to be, going on an insane adventure to bring down a third world country.
Anyway.
All right, there's no surprise.
You've gone off the rails. What's next?
Now that we've wrapped up current events, we're going to take you into a segment called Storytime. This segment we use to harken back to happenstances and fun times and not so fortunate times in our convention history or elsewhere. This story that I'm going to tell you takes place at one of the early Otakons that I attended, and it involves myself and an unnamed friend standing in the halls of Otakon on the last day, on the Sunday, and really the only thing that's left to do is to stand in line for the dealer's room or wait around and maybe take a few pictures. So my friend and I were standing there in the hallway, and we noticed this event developing there in the hallway. Now, you don't really see this anymore these days, but at the time, a popular feature of the hallway at larger conventions was something called the hug line. And what this was a bunch of people would line up and just basically offer free hugs. It was like that free hug campaign, but en masse, and slightly terrifying at times. So my friend and I are standing there, and we suddenly turn and look at each other. And it's one of those moments where you're both thinking the exact same thing.
Horrible thing.
Wonderful things. So we have this idea that's formulated between us. And one of us gets on the phone and calls up our favorite friend, Bob. You absolutely, positively must get up here right away. No, it's very important. We can't tell you. You just have to come. And we're standing there in the hallway wondering which direction he's going to come from because, the hallways at Otakon, they're set up a little weirdly that way. This is back when they were at the BCC, obviously. As we're waiting, the hug line's getting a little bit more aggressive, just sitting there in its own little world. And then we see him coming around the corner ever so slowly in his steady forward marching trot. Ever reliable Bob pacing himself through the halls of Otakon. And then he sees us. And he starts to get a hitch in his step as he gets closer. And then he almost comes to a full stop as he sees the shit-eating grins on our face. And we realize that he is about to avoid the trap. Except it's too late. It's far too late.
My friend and I point at him, and we declare together, "This guy needs a hug!" And the hug line, ever watchful for victims, springs into action.
Now, there's a good 30-plus feet between Bob and the perpetrators at this point. And most of them are just, these skinny little kids who are not going to get very far and definitely don't want to tangle with a guy the size of Bob. But there's one hero. the hero we need in otakudom, who stepped up to the plate. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was a 14-year-old girl in a Meta Knight cosplay. It was immaculate. And let me tell you something. Bob had already turned around and was heading out for the door. That Meta Knight cosplayer must have gone on to break world record sprinting runs. Because, oh my god, she covered that distance in mere seconds. And Bob, who was looking over his shoulder, did the only thing that he could do. He pivoted to the right. And the next movement was he pivoted his camera into his other hand. Because the one thing that Bob will not allow to happen are bad things to his camera. And as the Meta Knights came in slowly, it was like watching it in the slow motion video, sprang for him on the final jump, and Bob stiff-armed that cosplayer. And the Meta Knight, not to be dissuaded, despite the powerful force behind Bob's arm, went in for a second lunge, and was stiff-armed again, right in the chest. And finally, that Meta Knight knew that she had been beaten, and turned dejectedly away to go back to the hug line. And Bob, feeling the icy coldness of his heart melt at the sight of this poor cosplayer who worked so hard to give him love of fandom, stopped her with a gesture and went in for the hug, only to be swarmed by the swarm. That was the hug line, and he was devoured by 30 people that day. A sight I have not seen since the days of my time as Iriyuki, which you've already heard on this podcast. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of how Bob was mauled by the hug line.
Isn't there a video of it?
There is some video somewhere of at least part of the incident. At some point, I'll have to track that down. Now it's time to head into our first discussion topic for the day. We're going to be talking about Bojack Season 5. Horseman, obviously.
Of course.
If you haven't already managed to binge it, it is available on Netflix. It has been for a few days now, and it's very important that you watch it. Have you not gotten into Bojack Horseman yet? Now is a good time to start. You've got a lot of episodes available. You can binge it in a couple sittings, or maybe all at once, though I don't recommend that at this point. You can definitely do it over the course of a few weeks, but you have a lot of material to work with, and you're not going to be constrained by that problem of having a lot of cliffhangers. At this point, we're at a very... I think by the end of Season 5, we're at a very good rest point. It's not like it's leaving you dangling on a lot of things. So, we're going to go into that now. Let's talk about the plot overview of Season 5. Also, spoiler alert. Sorry, guys. There's not a whole lot that we can talk about that's not spoiler at this point. But, you know what? I will mention this. Bojack Horseman is the story that takes place in a world where, let's just call them what they are, furry characters. Anthropomorphic creatures live side by side with humans. It's never, and the best part is, it's never actually brought up or addressed. It's just the way they are. And everyone's capable of crossbreeding with each other, and that's just, how things are. And within this world, there is this actor named Bojack Horseman, who was big on a sitcom called Horsin' Around, of course.
In the 90s.
Back in the 90s. He was on a very famous TV show. And now he's in his early 50s. And is, of course, very disenfranchised, hasn't been getting a lot of work recently, is a complete alcoholic, kind of a druggie, and just, whenever he's not feeling completely miserable, is feeling miserable at a party.
Or just by himself.
That's true.
To be fair.
Well, he's not alone at the beginning. He's got a roommate at the beginning.
Yeah.
But that's a spoiler. So, here's the spoiler alert again, and from here on, it's spoilers. Let's talk about Season 5.
So when we left off in Season 4, Princess Carolyn is pitching Filbert to whattimeisitRightNow.com executives. And she, in order to do this, forges Bojack's signature.
Uh-oh.
She is drowning in depression because of her most recent miscarriage, her breakup with Ralph. And she finally decides, you know what, I'm going to stop feeling sorry for myself, and I'm just going to go to Bojack and come clean. And ask him, as a friend, for a favor, please just do this show for me.
And it works out. Wow, honesty.
Right. At the same time, Bojack has a realization about Hollyhock. Hollyhock is not his daughter.
but his sister.
He puts pieces together. I forget what it was. Something absolutely ridiculous that makes him put the pieces together.
Probably the sound of that still small voice in their head telling them to drink.
No. It was like the name of a movie or an actor. I forget what it was, and it leads him down this rabbit hole where he realizes that his father knocked up the help.
Yep.
And he goes down to every county office trying to track down the name of the woman who used to be the maid, which is Henrietta. And he, even though the eight dads that Hollyhock has will not let Bojack see Hollyhock, they do at least allow the message to pass through of here is Hollyhock's true mother.
8 dads. Too many cooks. Too many cooks. Too many cooks.
And then, the last time we leave Todd, he gets into a relationship with Yolanda. As he finds out Yolanda
everybody's
is also
asexual now.
asexual.
And let me think. Well, no, we covered Hollyhock. We covered Bojack's line. At the end of season 4, Mr. Peanut Butter and Diane are getting a divorce finally.
Yep.
Everything is falling apart and they can't stand each other anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really ties up the major plot threads.
Pretty much. Oh, we did forget. Not only did she lose Ralph, Princess Carolyn, lose Ralph and the baby, but she fires Judah.
Judah!
I
forgot about Judah!
Which really is upsetting to me because he doesn't, again, spoilers for season 5, he doesn't show up again for season 5 at all. And I was really hoping he would come back.
Yeah, I mean, especially because of all the other things that she's going through. And because, I mean, all right, yeah, I get it, trust issues. But I mean, Princess Carolyn.
I mean,
he overstepped his boundaries once. I mean, I'm going to predict that you're going to sleep with Bojack again before this show is over, and you got rid of the best other male influence in your life. All right, sorry. Moving on, season 5. Let's go ahead and talk to them. Where do we come in?
So, season 5 starts off with Bojack basically having some misgivings about Filbert.
Oh, yeah, you could say that.
As typical, as soon as a project starts for Bojack, he starts questioning, this is all shit. I don't like the character. I don't like this. But he has a particular issue with Filbert. It's because Filbert, I think, comes way too close to home to who he is. Not only does Filbert live in the exact same house he does, which later comes to haunt him big time by the series finale, but he also has the debilitating, like, alcohol issues, relationship issues.
Well, I mean, he didn't kill his own wife, but yeah.
He did.
No, Bojack didn't. He's never been married.
No, but he's had relationship issues.
But yeah, okay, I get what you're saying.
And then we also have Princess Carolyn doing something that kind of upsets me. She goes off to do the adoption, but she's doing it without Ralph. Even though Ralph did kind of say, hey,
let's adopt.
Let's look into other options. You don't have to carry the baby. And now she's going off and doing it by herself, which is wonderful and horrifying at the same time.
Meanwhile, you got Diane going on her little journey of self-discovery over to, what is it, Vietnam?
Yeah, that's episode 2. Deals specifically with Diane. Todd is looking for a job.
And also trying to reconcile the way he feels with the way his girlfriend, Yolanda, feels. Which leads into some very interesting hijinks and probably the best Todd episode of the Bojack series so far.
Planned Obsolescence, that's episode 3.
Where he meets her parents, who turn out to be sex freaks, porn directors, and just general shenanigan hooligans.
Well, we'll get back into that. So, moving on to episode 4, we have the episode titled Bojack the Feminist.
And then we get into this whole cool time-lapse thing. Because you find out that they've been doing, like, the Halloween party for years.
We're skipping way ahead of time.
Well, you don't need to go episode by episode.
No.
That ties into it because you get that whole Mr. Peanut Butter in his retro costume thing.
Well, he does the retro costume because he's trying to be tough.
I know.
Because he wants serious roles. So he's now the comedian now trying to become more serious. Where it's easier for Bojack, it's more relatable. It's not coming as naturally to Mr. Peanut Butter. You also have Princess Carolyn working through her, not only her adoption issues, because she's had at least one mother say no to her, the other mother say no to her because she gave her an empowering speech. But we see that she's had a history of miscarriage. We see her very first pregnancy.
Yeah, we get that preview into her family history as well. So we got Bojack dealing with the new show, the continual self-reflection and his addiction issues. We have Mr. Peanut Butter trying to change his serious role and deal with the fallout with Diane. We have Diane dealing with fallout with Mr. Peanut Butter, trying to rediscover herself. We've got Todd being Todd.
Being Todd.
And also Todd introducing an entirely new character named Henry Fondle, who manages to stick around much longer than we all expected. The thing that I thought was kind of lacking, we basically don't get any Hollyhock after the first episode.
We do get a little bit of Hollyhock. We do have Hollyhock has her own episode.
Yeah, but
I know, especially because it seemed like the first episode was setting up that she would have at least a phone call every episode, because they're supposed to have their weekly Sunday phone calls. But then it's like that thread drops off until the height of Bojack's addiction to opioids, and she finds out.
Yeah, and I mean that's what I mean is that the Hollyhock that we do get later on in this season is a lot more about Bojack's problems than about anything that's going on with her. She's brought in to kind of give him that final tip over of, I'm basically embarrassing myself in front of the only other person who cares about me. One of the big central conflicts that's presented in this season is I think it's about halfway through, Bojack's mother dies.
Yes. And
that's how we get the episode Free Churro. I'm not going to go too much into it, but this, I think, is my favorite episode of the season. It doesn't have a whole lot of visual shake-up or change-up. It is, in fact, mostly the main character doing a monologue, with a few surprises to keep things from getting, I guess, too dark by the end of it.
Well, I think we should, because I know we're going to go into detail on that particular one. I feel that kind of sets up this domino effect. His mother dies, but then we see his use in painkillers increase, and the number of Bojack-centric episodes increase as well, as you start seeing his slowly demise into not just painkillers, but losing himself in the Filbert role. Yeah,
that's true. And I think at the end of the day, when it comes to Free Churro specifically, because I feel like that's definitely an episode that you need to see for yourself. I don't think there's an accurate way to break it down if you haven't seen it. It's encapsulated by the phrase that he comes in at the end with. My mother is dead and everything is worse now.
I could probably offer insight if we were going to go specifically into it. So we know the troubled relationship he has with his mother. If you have a troubled relationship with your parents, the way that Bojack kind of has with his mother, Free Churro becomes one of those episodes where at least I did, and I know that a lot of other people who have trouble with their parents will ugly cry. You will ugly cry, you will laugh, and then definitely by the end of it, I had tears coming down completely, and you laugh because at the end, I'm not going to spoil what it is, but there is something that I think it bookends, the relationship with his mother perfectly. Because there is one phrase that's constantly repeated.
Yep, that's true.
And it kind of, you realize that she's always saying it, and at the end, it still rings true about their relationship.
Well, yeah, but that's the beautiful thing about that episode is that it really is it's a perfect exhibit of farce. Mm-hmm. It's not quite comedy, but it is a farce, and that's what I think makes that particular episode very brilliant.
It also is the complete inverse. I saw a lot of people making this reference, and I totally agree with them. It's the total inverse to what is the other?
I think it's season 2.
Fish out. No, I have it here somewhere. Fish Out of Water, season 3. It's the perfect inverse of that episode.
From minimal speech to full speech.
Yes.
Lack of visuals versus almost no visual. I'm sorry. Lack of visuals versus full visuals.
Full visuals, right. And
though, in the sense of bookending things,
Also ends with farce.
yeah, they both do. Well, that's why I said it's a perfect inverse. And not only that, but the other inverse, if you think about it, is at the end of Fish Out of Water, the farce is a audio joke, where the farce at the end of Free Churro is a visual gag.
well, almost.
It is a visual.
All right. You're right. You're
gag.
right. It is technically a visual gag. I was thinking less so because of the specific nature, which I'm not going to spoil it. Sorry. There are limits to what the spoiler is going to tell you.
Mm-hmm. Well, because that, like you said, that is an episode that you kind of have to experience. We can talk about it in depth, maybe when it's not so fresh.
Well, no, I think the problem with talking about it is that what are we going to say that isn't obvious from what the character says? It's like trying to for me, like trying to give further analysis to what he's talking about beyond saying, yeah, this is something that you will relate to if you've had a completely shitty relationship with your parents over the course of your entire lifetime. That's absolutely true. But I mean, as far as the reason why it pans out the way it does is best explained by the character's monologue.
Yeah, actually, the one thing I will say is it helped me bring to light one thing that I always had with the issue of the passing of my father, which is, he mentions at one point where I thought I didn't know where this tangent was going to go. He's like, the problem with your parent passing on is like this one show. I thought this show could have been great, but then they canceled it, and then I knew I was bummed out, not because I liked the show. I was bummed out because it could never be great. And that's the problem with passing away, with your parent passing away when you've had a troubled relationship, is there's always some part of you that wants to have that relationship with your father or your mother or, guardian. And once they pass away, that's it. You don't get to have that good relationship. And that is, I don't know, sometimes you can think it, but hearing it from somebody else's perspective is always really interesting, too. It helps you get that insight better, I think.
The other hard-hitting point coming into the wrap-up for the season is, of course, the ongoing theme of whether or not Bojack can change. I mean, they hit it really hard to us in the trailer. By the end of it, through several different happenstances over the course of the season, it becomes very clear to Bojack that he does have a problem. You could say that he's already known that, but it just really, really comes out, and it's in a much more, in a way that he can't keep it to himself. Things come out to people that care about him, that he cares about, and that he cares what they think about him. Some of the things just go full public. And those circumstances, despite everyone's best attempts to kind of downplay them, really do finally weigh on him that something's got to give. First, it leads him into another downward spiral. By the end of the season, most of the characters are leaving us with the impression that
Things might get better.
we were kind of fooled into that at the end of season 4, though. Season 4 felt like the least depressing ending of all the seasons. Mm-hmm. And now I'm not sure. I'm not sure where this is going to go. We're being led in to believe that things are getting better. Well, maybe not for Mr. Peanut Butter.
Don't even start with the Mr. Peanut Butter.
Maybe not for Mr. Peanut Butter. But a lot of the other characters feel like they are ready to springboard off of where they are and maybe take things to a slightly happier note, at least through the first part of the next season, whenever that's going to come out.
Well, I mean, I feel like if you categorize the events, there's 2 events that end up, I think, with Bojack realizing he needs to really change, and still doesn't. It's not until the second event happens that finally snaps him out of it. The first one being when Diane writes the one episode where Flip was having brainstorming issues. And she writes the episode so that Bojack ends up saying the same thing he said to the reporter about what happened in New Mexico.
Which, I mean, that's not really a spoiler at this point.
No, but...
Between him and Charlotte's daughter, whose name I can't remember at the first for some reason, but his recounting of that event to the reporter gets shared with Diane, who then confronts him with it via the script writing.
But I felt like, so this whole time, Diane is walking through life and saying that she's basically mature, she can handle herself, she's her own strong woman. And that felt like such a contradiction to her own character that tells me she's not as...
Things are not all right.
Things are not all right with Diane, because if you think about it, if she suspected what she suspected about hearing the words that Bojack had said, you realize that's going to air. What if Charlotte and her daughter do end up seeing this? Now, they will at least get an inkling, possibly, from it.
It's possible. I mean, oh, that would be weird, wouldn't it? If that's the mechanism they use to bring those characters back into the narrative somehow.
I mean, that's just, it's so skeevy to me, because if they do put 2 and 2 together about what was said, especially with how Bojack's horrified face as he's reading the captions off, it's more than just acting, that's a real reaction out of him. It's just not the proper way. Even though I do like her quip later, I think it's in the Halloween episode, where he's like, do you know something? Well, do you want to talk about it? No. Then we won't talk about it. And she just walks off. It's like, so mature from the both of you. Then the second one was the one that shocked me the most, because I'm
when
not
he whacks
sure.
out on set?
I don't know if this is the worst thing he's ever done or not. I think people are actually discussing that in the subreddit right now, if this is the worst thing he's done or not.
I don't think so. I mean, all right, look, this is the same thing that I've said about some of the other things that are quote-unquote the worst thing he's done. Like, obviously, it's a terrible thing, and it shouldn't have happened, and it's completely his fault. But at the same time, unlike several of the other things he's done, this was a result of the equivalent of gross negligence. He wasn't willful about it when it happened.
He wasn't in his 4 senses because he was hallucinating because he was high off of...
Yeah. And
I assume Oxy was what he was high off
I
of.
think perhaps it's one of the more shocking things that he's done. Especially, I like the little callback that we talked about earlier, where he literally mentions
something when he's doing his feminist phase, and then it's like, oh, Bojack, you fool.
How about we just outright say, so, let me see what episode it was.
Well, his co-star / semi-girlfriend / fuck buddy, Gina,
yep,
is on set, and he's been in a drug-induced, hallucinogenic state where he's, mixing himself and his character a lot.
To the point where we're not even sure if it's the same day, different days. He never knows if he's on set, off set.
He's tripping balls.
He's trying to piece together a mystery of who knows his secrets, both in the show and off the show.
Yeah, at one point he thinks the entire show is a conspiracy to reveal his secrets.
Well, Diane didn't help with that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Mind you.
And by the end of it, he's actually on set, and he's essentially playing through his character.
Yeah, the scene called for Filbert to choke
Sassy something.
And then he actually
chokes her, and then he keeps choking her even when they call cut.
And everyone on
Of course,
set's
social
not really-
media.
Of course, everyone's taking video. Even the director, even Flip himself is taking video because he tells the cameraman to turn the camera back on. But Princess Carolyn and Mr. Peanut Butter are like, okay, that's enough, and they're not sure what's going on.
Method acting.
Are they actually acting? Or they're not acting? And finally, Mr. Peanut Butter goes, that's enough, and rushes in with a bunch of other stagehands, and he was actually choking her. But the next day, he has no recollection.
Yep, completely wigged out. And that, combined with his day with Hollyhock, I think finally settles everything.
Well, I mean, Hollyhock, with what she said to him
And what did
before
she went
left,
through? Yeah.
Well, no, but what she said before she left foreshadows what he eventually does. She's like, you can only take those pills if you get hurt again. And I'm like, you're telling him this as he's driving a weapon.
Hollyhock.
You're telling him this as he's driving a weapon. So, of course, the next scene is him wigging out because he doesn't have his pills because Hollyhock threw him down the sink. He couldn't get pills all night. What is he going to do? Just going to drive through the red light.
Of course he is. There really were a lot of high notes in the comedy side, too. We got those fun little side characters, whether it be Yolanda's family or Henry Fonda, the greatest side character in the history of the show. But what are our predictions for the future?
Well, actually, in terms of the comedy, the meta-ness of the show itself has gone up significantly.
Oh my god,
well.
that kind of grated on my nerves a little bit.
Really?
I'm gonna be honest.
I absolutely loved it.
It's we're gonna talk about this in a future episode about what they were getting at with the meta-ness, about how, what's the point of the show if it facilitates these people into thinking that they're just okay and they're normal and they're allowed to continue to be self-destructive.
And it glamorizes
go ahead.
Toxic masculinity is what I was going to say.
My least favorite phrase in the entire human world. We're going to get to that because I want to talk about it in the context of Rick and Morty as well.
Yep.
And that's going to be in a future episode. So within that context, within everything we've talked about, what are we looking forward to in Season 6? What can we expect will happen? We already know a beloved character's set to come back.
We do?
Yeah. The character actor.
Oh, Margot Martindale. I was so happy when I saw her.
That one we are spoiling.
So, see, this is not so much what I think is going to happen, but what I hope happens is that Princess Carolyn finally gets back with Ralph.
And preggers.
I'm not sure about pregnant because she does have a baby now.
Oh, that's true.
But
I almost forgot about that. For some reason, I still had it in my head that she was snatched out of her hands again at the last minute.
No. She does actually have a baby now from one of the girls that originally said no. I just really want to see her back with Ralph because he is one of the most stable, besides Judah, he was one of the most stable male figures in her life. But I don't think it's going to happen because she denied him already in this season.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that you think that's weird, but I was thinking about that a little more since I watched the show, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's interesting in the sense that I get where she's coming from when she said that. Well, I mean, okay, I understand Ralph's resentment right off the bat because, we kind of broke up over this. But I think what she's getting at is that she wanted to make that decision, and in her opinion, the undue pressure he was bringing on her for that made their future in adoption incompatible. I think that's what she was getting at.
So I understand her in that sense, because when I rewatched that particular episode and how he approaches the other alternatives, he's way too forceful. Being in that situation myself, what he says hurts. And I can understand if she's still hurt and doesn't want to move forward with a relationship with him. But at the same time, we all kind of say things that hurt in that kind of situation, both men and women, because
Be practical, Princess Carolyn.
While we don't think about infertility of a woman affecting your partner, it does. And I think that's an aspect of that part of the relationship we don't talk about. Of how when a woman can't carry a baby, how it will affect the partner who is in, that's the thing about having a baby, it's two ways. So I kind of feel like she's ignoring his feelings as well.
Yeah, I think we can agree on that. But I mean, like, I said this about another show too. I don't know if there are heroes in this show, Roxy.
Oh, no, there's not. But that's
except for Henry Fondle. I think Henry Fondle might be the most morally stable character that the writers of BoJack Horseman have come up with. He was honest and straightforward from the get-go, and he never stopped. Never stopped.
So, the thing is, for me, is there are times, for the most part, this show is very good at reflecting reality. And then there's other times, like Harry Fondler, where I'm just like, okay, now we're just going to be ridiculous.
Anything with Todd.
Ridiculous. Well, to be fair, my favorite comment that Todd made this season was when he's talking to, oh my god, what is her name?
Emily,
thank you. And she's like, wow, you just don't understand sex. And he goes, it's not about whether I understand sex or not. I just can't build a robot.
The whole asexuality note has been a really interesting part of this new season. And honestly, when they first brought that in, I wasn't sure how I felt about that. I was like, okay, well, this feels unnecessary. But no, they've played with it a lot, and have brought in a lot of nuance to the discussion about, the problem for asexuals is, of course, just because we're asexual, is that the only thing we have in common? Oh, that's the only thing we have in common. Oops.
Well, I really love that Todd episode. The whole it goes from serious.
So much lube.
It goes from serious to the Benny Hill aspect, and I just realized we're not talking about the future. We're not talking about possibilities for season 6.
Well, unfortunately, we kind of abandoned the structure for the discussion here.
Clearly,
Henry Fondle, Todd, and all the other hijinks aside, what are we expecting? We've already discussed what might happen with Princess Carolyn. What's going to happen with our two central characters, Diane and Bojack?
Well, I think Diane isn't admitting, but she's probably due for her own mental breakdown. We didn't get to see much of her spiraling out of control in this season because we've been so focused on Bojack. But you know how almost every ending we focus on Bojack as the outro.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I mean, I don't know.
We didn't this time, though. It was Diane.
Fair enough.
So I'm wondering if the next season leads straight into Diane because, as we know, Bojack's going to rehab. Now, not saying that's going to work.
Which means 6 weeks with him not actually being around, which means they could either time skip or they could spend 6 weeks doing other things.
Which could lead to possibly us seeing more of the other characters and less of actual Bojack.
That is possible. And I was going to say, I don't know if I necessarily agree that it was so focused on Bojack to the exclusion of Diane, because we see a lot of... You know what? Maybe I'll phrase it a different way. Maybe you're right. Maybe there will be a much bigger focus on Diane, and in fact, there probably should be a bigger focus on Diane in the next season, because we've gotten a lot of hints about what a breakdown might look like for her. Arguably, she's already hit a crisis point and failed the test.
Yep. She's definitely... I'm not saying we haven't seen hints of it. We're seeing hints of a slow progression, and maybe she doesn't hit her mental breakdown as quickly as, say, Bojack, because 1, she's not an alcoholic, and 2, she's not currently abusing drugs, and we needed to get Bojack's complete breakdown through first before we can get to Diane's. Because now she has to deal with that alone. She can't really be around Mr. Peanut Butter because 1, they keep hooking up, and ruining Mr. Peanut Butter's relationship.
Oh, Mr. Peanut Butter.
She can't really talk to Princess Carolyn because she's going to have a kid. She can't talk to Todd because I'm sure Todd's going to be...
Is Todd.
Todd is Todd. Todd's going to go off and do Todd things. So, at the end of the day, who does Diane have but Bojack?
Henry Fondle.
But what I want to know is, are we going to get more Hollyhock? They introduced this great character, and I want more of her. And I'm just worried we're not going to see Hollyhock because Bojack's going to be in rehab.
I expect that if we're going to see Hollyhock, it's going to be in the late part of season 6. I don't see a reason for her to come back, especially... I mean, unless it's like one of those, oh, come visit me because I'm getting out of rehab things. But again, that might be later in the season. Because we've already left her off on a point where it's like, well, I mean, why would I come back right now when you're like this?
Well, I mean...
We don't have a reason. I mean, unless we get like one of those spin-off indie episodes where it's like a misadventure of Hollyhock kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I don't expect to see her in the main plot narrative, that's for sure.
I will say one thing. Bojack's really lucky to not have died this season.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
I mean, it's not just the Oxy.
Yeah, it's several things.
The alcohol, because...
Who cared about that? He, like, jumped off a building.
Oh,
what are you talking about?
Forgot about
Who cares about the alcohol? He almost broke his back.
The alcohol, the Oxy, the jumping off a building, and the running into traffic and T-boning somebody. I am surprised this guy has more lives than Princess Carolyn.
Any other predictions for season 6?
I'm trying to think of what other character we haven't talked about.
I mean, I'm not even sure it's necessarily a character specific. We've gotten down to...
Mr. Peanut Butter! Mr. Peanut Butter! Mr. Peanut Butter got engaged to Pickles!
Again. Well, I should say he's gotten engaged again.
So, I'm wondering...
Well, it'll be good through the Halloween party.
Oh...
We have that to look forward to. By the way, I want to briefly touch on that again in context of what to expect. Because when you find out, there's a lot of things that you didn't quite know about how the characters have interacted in the past. Mm-hmm. And it all focuses in on that Halloween party that apparently happens at Bojack's house every year. And I think we've been given a preview of how Mr. Peanut Butter and Pickles is going to progress. From that episode. I also think that...
I actually think it's going to be the reverse. Because, so, the Halloween episode talks about how Mr. Peanut Butter keeps dating younger and younger women, and eventually they all kind of turn bitter. And Diane specifies, it's not that we're getting bitter, it's not this or that, it's that you don't grow up, Mr. Peanut Butter. And you keep dating younger and younger women, and eventually they do grow up. So the problem here is that I noticed by the end of the Halloween episode is Pickles, she's already mentioned she doesn't want to grow up and she wants to be young forever, Pickles. And she doesn't seem to really be bitter.
Yeah.
I actually think you're going to see the reverse because he's the one annoyed by the end of the day. When she says, I don't want to grow up, he kind of like goes... Yay!
Oh no, I completely agree with you, and I think that's what
I think we're going to see the inverse. I think we're going to see Mr. Peanut Butter grow up, actually fairly quickly for his age.
Yeah.
And he's not going to know how to break off this relationship with Pickles.
Yeah, and I mean that's basically exactly what I was going to get at. I didn't mean that it was going to be an exact clone of everything that had happened before.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a 180. It's going to be the inverse. Mm-hmm. And I'm starting to wonder if that's what we'll see as well with everything that we've expected from these characters up until this point, as exhibited through these Halloween flashbacks, is going to be turned on its head. I'm starting to wonder
if, for example, Bojack's going to get into that recovery stage, kind of like what you saw with Sarah Lynn, and then his new conflict isn't going to be that he couldn't be better.
It's that everyone around him who were his rocks, he's going to find himself unmoored and kind of leaving them behind, and he's not going to know how to deal with that. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm starting to think might be happening, and so that might just push him back into the hole, Because if there's nothing for him on the other side of recovery, why bother going through the rest of it?
Right.
We haven't seen Diane hit rock bottom just yet. And Diane's really the only other person in his life right now. His parents are dead. Mm-hmm. Hollyhock is far away. And will probably continue to be that distant, can only do so much for you kind of character.
Well, yeah, and she's also not emotionally mature enough.
Yeah.
She's a young adult still finding her roots. He's 50.
Yeah, well, it's time to figure it out, Bojack.
So, I mean, he may have the mental stability of a teenager, but she can't be his rock when he comes out of rehab.
And I'm thinking that Princess Carolyn might be the most well-positioned person at the moment, because now what I'm thinking might happen is that Princess Carolyn will also kind of do that 180. She will completely abandon everything she's wanted to go do what her mother thought she wanted.
Because now it's what she wants, and that is to take care of the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe involve Ralph, I don't know. That's kind of still on the fence there, but that will also remove her from the picture. Whether she moves back to her hometown or goes somewhere else, I don't know if she'll be around to help Bojack.
Yeah, because you notice that as soon as they said, Filbert is canceled, she didn't stay a second after she heard that. She just ran. And that tells me that what she wants is that kid. And her career is now going to come second, unlike what it used to be. I think she's kind of tired of always taking care of all these kind of privileged stars that she wants.
Her children.
She wants an actual child.
When you realized that what you wanted was what you were doing in the first place.
And actually, I kind of find it funny that Flip goes, or was I Princess Carolyn all along? What if Flip becomes Princess Carolyn? You know that that's something that the writers would do just to fuck with us.
Bobo the angsty zebra.
Oh my god, I love that.
Bobo the angsty zebra. That's how you know that the writers will never be done with us. We hope that you're all just as excited as us to see where this show goes. It could go in a lot of different directions. Maybe some of our predictions will be accurate. You'll know to come back here and tell everyone that this is where you first heard it.
And, I mean, by all means, go watch Season 5, and I'm sure that you'll start finding callbacks in every episode. This has been the season of callbacks, it feels like.
Guys, just look for the popsicle stick. That's all I'm going to say. And if you have your own thoughts about Bojack, Season 5, where the show might be going, feel free to leave a comment below, or post on our Facebook page or Twitter, or even, if we ever get around to posting the link somewhere other than this video, the Reddit page. I love dank memes. Share some dank memes with us. With that being said, we're going to head into our next segment here at Of Duelists and Drunkards. We're going to reintroduce the segment of Roxy Reads Cosmo Sex Tips. Roxy, won't you share with us the insightful article that we are going to read today involving sex tips from Cosmo?
This week in Cosmo Sex Tips, we're going to read 10 signs he's selfish in bed.
Oh no, men, watch out.
The first tip. His gameplay is virtually non-existent. He doesn't bother trying to warm you up. Maybe a little bit of making out, and then he jams his hands down your pants and it's on to the main event. Opening acts exist for a reason.
So, alright, I get what they're getting at here, but jams his hand down your pants. You know, I mean,
see,
do we or do we not consider hand movement part of foreplay now? I don't know.
I mean,
I feel out of my element as a sexologist.
I always considered it part of... I mean, unless they mean that he goes straight to fingering you instead of, like,
I'm gonna finger bang you every night.
But my problem is they act as if all men are just ready and want to jump for it. You know, men want foreplay too.
The penis is at its hardest after 10 minutes of stimulation.
It's just that women need a little bit more than that.
About the
typically.
same. Really?
Well, it depends on every woman, but some women tend to
10
be
to
a
20
little
minute
bit-
range for full warm-up. Guys, treat it just like you would at the gym. For those of you who aren't couch potatoes, those of you who are couch potatoes, hit that couch to 5K. That's where it's at. Warm up. You gotta warm up.
So number 2, he never goes down on you.
This is true.
No one should have to do anything they don't feel comfortable during sex, but if he can't be bothered and meanwhile pesters you for countless blowjobs, that's lame as hell and that dude sucks.
Well, no, he doesn't. That's the point.
Well, I don't know. You don't know if he's sucking something else.
Well, clearly
Not
not
you.
if he's just going down and Oh, okay. I see
I
what you mean.
didn't say not on you. Not on you.
Yes, I'm sure there's a great correlation there. Yep, won't perform oral sex on the girl because he's
Clearly
thinking about
having
the cock.
dick. Anyways,
Number 3.
that's all you have to say about that, Tim?
I don't know. Did you have something else to add?
I was gonna say, I'm not really sure how common it is for a guy to go, no, I'm not going down on you, and then ask for 1 million blowjobs.
I mean, this is what I would say. I don't feel like it's been common within the length of my experience talking to people, but for some reason I keep hearing it brought up, so I assume it happens somewhere.
I guess.
I don't run into it often enough to think it's common, but I guess it must be.
I mean, if it's something that he's not
There was that
comfortable
one
with,
guy who was like, oh no, I'm the king. I don't remember who that was. Some guy who got highlighted on Philly D.
I'm sure that if you're not comfortable with it, that's one thing. But if you're not going down because you don't feel like you know what you're doing, I mean, there's plenty of tutorials. I know that there's like porn stars who do tutorials on how to not just do blowjobs, but go down on women as well. So you can do that. You can actually talk to your partner. Sex shouldn't be something we're ashamed of talking about.
No. Also, you would be amazed at the similarity of mechanics between a blowjob and regular oral sex on a woman.
So are you saying that guys need to suck cock to know how to eat pussy?
Were you even present at the bigger Dammer panel of sheer manliness when I said that the mechanics are so similar that if you are a true man, I'm not saying you have to, but I'm saying that you should be fully capable of sucking that dick.
Okay, now we're going to move on. We're going to go to number 3 now. He only wants his position. He has his favorites.
What the hell is that? What does that mean?
Clearly, he has a hairy fondler, and you're only allowed to use that.
Consensual heterosexual sex in the missionary position. Nothing else.
He has his favorites, and they're what you tend to find yourself in, even after you've told him that they don't really work for you, or you simply want to switch it up.
You know, you'd be amazed how pleasurable modified missionary position is for most people.
If you find yourself always doing missionary, there are ways to change that up. If you find yourself always in doggy, there is actual...
I don't think anyone actually does that all the time.
So...
He never wants to look me in the eyes!
The only
So
time...
unless you're Satan and Saddam Hussein...
I was going to say, I can see it sometimes if you have some physical issues, but if you have like back pain, there are differently positioned positions you can try. That's great English. But if you have like back pain, if you have certain other chronic conditions and you find yourself always in one position, I'm sure there is research out there to tell you how to spice up your sex life with other new exciting positions that will also not affect your chronic illness.
Leather padded adjustable chairs.
Well, there's also like
Actually, I don't recommend
pillow.
that. I don't recommend that at all.
No.
Leather padding makes you sweat.
I was going to say there's actually a really nice sex pillow for people who have chronic illnesses and want to try different positions in which you can use it for other things. Anyways,
The more you know.
number 4, he finishes fast. He treats sex like it's a 100-meter dash. He's pumping away and it's doing nothing for you, and all of a sudden it's over. He's the Michael Bay of boning.
The Michael Bay of boning. You know, I don't know if I've ever heard a woman say that they get nothing out of super fast sex. I would say that the problem is super fast sex inevitably ends a lot faster.
Like, I've never heard anyone complain about the RPMs.
I mean, I'm sure that there are people who complain that guys do the porn star thing where they think that if they mimic the thrusting ability of a porn star that does something for a woman. That's, you know how you fix that? Communication.
That'd be helpful, wouldn't it?
There's communication. There's also, I think, a thrust that if you do like, what is it? 8
I think it's called the
one,
wave method.
Yeah, 8 small thrusts and then 1 big one.
I think it's 7. 7 and 1.
Yeah, 7 and 1. That works as well. Guys, it's not how big it is, it's the motion of the ocean. So that means the thrusting ability. You don't have to go fast, you don't have to go slow. If it works for you fast, good. If it works for you slow, good. If it works for you somewhere in between. Everyone's different.
Unless you're multi-orgasmic, it might be best to slow down a little bit, just so you know. Next tip?
Well, I was going to say, if you can have multiple ones, sometimes it does help going faster because you're supposed to push past the orgasm to get to the next one.
True.
By the way.
Most of you aren't.
That's one way to find out. But,
that's true.
But be careful because it can be painful. Number 5. And when he's done, it's over. Don't expect him to stick around to make sure you get yours. He's either getting dressed or immediately falling asleep.
I feel like the easiest way to get around this is just to get off your partner first. Then it doesn't matter.
I guess.
I feel like that's actually a common line of advice, even outside, even perhaps within Cosmo. It's like, well, if we're I mean, in fairness, this is talking about the straight couples. I feel like, I mean, if you're getting your girl off 3 or 4 times prior to even oh wow, I can't remember my sex terms all of a sudden, to coitus, then it really doesn't matter, does it?
I mean, it also depends. Maybe she doesn't want cuddling afterwards either.
Oh wait, are they talking about cuddling?
I mean, I assume because it's not just about orgasming. It sounds like
I'm pretty sure this tip is just about, oh no, he blew his load, he's done. I don't think it has anything to do with cuddling. I'm pretty sure to get yours, I'm pretty sure means the O face.
Yeah, but then it's also saying he's either getting dressed or immediately falling asleep, which means there's no post.
All right. I see what you're getting at, but I still don't think that that's what they're talking about.
No, and actually, so I understand the wanting an orgasm every time you guys have sex, but here's what I put a but. Guys, sometimes it's not about the orgasm. It's about the physical connection with the person you're with.
Guys, it's about the orgasm.
It is not always about the... I've actually had some of my best sex experiences are when I don't orgasm because you've spent a really long physical interaction with your significant other. Now, if you really just need to get off, I understand that too. You know, and that's when you communicate and say, hey, don't leave. You're coming back here and getting me off. Be assertive about your needs.
Rockstar would like you all to know that sometimes it's okay to be lame.
It's not lame.
It is so lame.
It's emotional and physical connection, guys. Okay.
Yes, which is capstone by the O.
Number 6.
Okay.
He has a lot of unwarranted opinions and feedback for you.
Like what? Like, do your nails a different color?
This guy could use a lot of pointers, and yet he lets you know what you could do differently. Or worse, he wants you to shave or bleach because it's what he likes.
I thought the entire purpose of, sex dialogue was communication. So, I mean, they don't come out and say it. I assume what they mean is if they're not open to suggestions themselves. But no, you probably should let them know how they could do better. And you should also do that. Don't sit there like Miss Prissy Pants and be like, oh, he only has opinions about how I can improve, and he sucks. But I will never say that to him, because I'm a woman.
Guys, communication, big. Now, if it's an issue of he wants you to shave down there and you don't want to shave because it's your body, that's different. It's your body. You do what you want. But at the same time, compromise. If he's asking you to shave and you're telling him to trim back the hairs because it's difficult for blowjobs, don't expect him to do it and you not to do a little bit of something back.
Yeah, I know that this issue apparently keeps coming up in like discourse on power balance and sexual relationships. Now, I'll preface this. I understand that people have differences of opinion, but I've honestly I don't understand why some people find a problem with adapting to your partner's preferences.
I don't understand why this is such a sticking point for some people. Maybe it's because I don't care that much if I need to change something. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, this works better for you. Okay, that's fine by me. Whatever.
I mean,
maybe that's just my happy-go-lucky attitude or something, but I feel like people are getting really stuck on that.
I don't know, because for me, it's, hey, if this helps you have better sex, this helps me have better sex.
That's
when
how I feel
you're
about
more
it.
comfortable, I'm more comfortable. So I'm not even sure if it's... I feel like I'm getting out of my own way, because if I'm giving my partner a better sex experience, at the end of the day, that trickles back down to me.
Yeah, and I mean, like, hell, okay, well, yeah, let's all shave. Shave everything. Why not?
So, that's just, I guess, that's just my personal opinion. If you have issues, you have issues. Everyone's different.
But it's two ways. Well, I'll give them that
compromise.
much. It's a two-way discussion and a two-way working through whatever capstone you guys come up with.
Yep. Number 7. He doesn't care about his own hygienes. He smells like a dumpster and has uncapped hairy balls. It's like a literal dumpster with hairy balls is plugging away at you and you're just not into that. I mean, if that's a problem, I'm worried about your everyday dating life, not just your sex life. If he smells like a dumpster, that must be a problem when you're going on a regular date. Right? Like,
who describes their partner this way? Guys, wash your balls. You're done. All right, I feel like we've appropriately addressed this issue.
I mean, it's not like you need to take a shower every time before having sex, but...
Sex is messy sometimes, guys. Get over it.
Hygiene. Anyways. 8. He doesn't help you clean up.
What have you done that requires cleaning up? Just
dude,
all over the table. Everywhere.
Yes. And he jizzed all over the table.
Animals. You're animals.
So,
yeah, you should all clean up. Throw
wait.
the sheets in the washing.
You need to hear the comment afterwards.
Okay.
It's the equivalent of cooking dinner for him and then having to do the dishes too. Now, I don't feel it's like that at all. It's
yeah, especially
like...
since you both had to put in the effort and throw your body fluids in random places.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, technically, it's like you both cooked dinner and now neither of you wants to clean up.
And that's how you have problems with the black light, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm checking that apartment with a black light.
Anyways.
Looks like a frickin' Jackson Pollock painting.
Number 9. He pushes you to have sex even if you're not in the mood. Instead of expressing empathy when you explain that you're exhausted from work or have been down lately, he makes you feel like you're failing as a partner because you're not trying harder to get in the mood, which, surprise, surprise, makes you even less into boning. And he gets off... He just needs to get off your feelings. What the hell is that sentence? He just needs to get off your feelings come second.
Well, see, that's a dash.
Oh, okay. He just needs
which
to get
represents
off
a separate clause.
He just needs to get off. Your feelings come second.
I know this is another point that a lot of people stick on. And I mean, again, I can only speak from personal experience. It's like, I mean, I don't know how frequently I'm unenthusiastic about sex in general, but I feel like there have been times where I was goaded into it. I don't care. Yeah, sure, why not?
I mean, see, I don't know. I guess it depends on how high your sex drive is. Because, I won't speak to yours, but mine is a high sex drive. So for the most part, it's going to be very rare if you ever find me not in the mood. I don't think I can ever be, like, I have to be really sick. And maybe really sick to not want to have sex.
And maybe that's the problem, is disproportionate sex drives for a lot of people. But I don't know.
The way I explain this,
I know that a lot of people have tied this to broader discussions about consent and things like that, and where the gray areas are, the dreaded gray areas in sex. I'm not really sure it's a huge deal if you want to try to convince your partner to go for a 5-minute quickie, but I don't know, that's just me.
So the way I would resolve this is talk to your partner about how often, what the ideal amount of sex in your relationship would be. And then from there, divide in half. Whatever your partner, the partner with the lower sex drive can do, that's what you do. And the other partner completes the next half. It's
what you might call the convoy system. The slowest boat sets the pace.
The other suggestion I have, if that doesn't work, is if you're not in the mood to go full physical sex, the partner who's not completely into it, maybe reads them an erotic story, maybe be there with them while they are, masturbating or something, or help them masturbate.
Yeah, honey, you go ahead. I'm just this part way through Robinson Crusoe. Oh yes, very nice. If you moan a little louder right now, I can pretend that's the lightning. Yeah, that sounds brilliant. Just give them a hand job and send them back to the bed. Come on, just do it.
Is not what I meant.
That's exactly what you said.
That is a hilarious way of putting it, but that's not what I meant. I meant, like, for instance, there is...
When you're done, can you bring me the milk for my cornflakes?
Fuck you, Panda. That's not what I meant. If you're a creative type and do, like, erotic art or literature or something, like, you could make a story up that you can eventually put up on Literotica.
And then Hagrid cast his spell. Ingorgia Manus.
We're moving on just because of that.
Yes,
Thanks.
We should have moved on a while ago. This was a terrible idea.
You're the one who ruined my tip. Oh, we're at number 10 already.
Hooray.
Number 10. He doesn't see a problem with any of this. You've tried talking to him about all of these things, and he brushes you off. At best, he passively says he'll try more, and then doesn't change any of his behaviors because he still values his own pleasure above yours.
Hey, look! The first one that's actually an indisputable problem. Communication is key. And that's whether it's sex, whether it's an everyday relationship, because you're waiting for marriage, because
you are good Christian folk. Or if it's your everyday, non-romantic sexual partnerships. Communication, guys. How much of this is going to come back to communication? All of it.
Now, I'm not saying you should break up with that person simply because of the sex issue, but...
You should break up with them.
But wait. But if he's not listening to you about sex issues, that's going to creep into other non-sex issues. If he just doesn't care about your pleasure in bed, for the most part, he's probably not into making sure that you are happy in general. So at that point, it's like, dude, I gotta do what's, dude or dudette, I gotta do what's best for me. And that's what I can say, is at the end of the day, do what is best for you. Don't stay in a relationship in which you're unhappy, not just about your own sexual pleasure, but about your own happiness in general, just to please the other person. Do what is right for you. Live your life the way you want to live it for yourself. Which actually comes up in Bojack, too.
Go figure. With that completed, we're going to head right into our video break for those of you who are here with us at YouTube. Enjoy.
Oh, yeah. What the f***?
Don't read that filth. Don't you know it's wrong? Here, try this.
Lollipop?
Put a little Moe in your life.
Ah.
Welcome back to a lovely evening here at Of Duelists and Drunkards. We're going to dive into our next segment, which is the List of the Week. Today's list is going to be one I hope that you're all going to immediately follow up by going online and buying some fabulous anime. For you see, today's list is obscure anime that Discotek has for you. I'm very big about home ownership of media. I do not buy into the streaming market very much because at the end of the day, they can always take it away from you. But not if you buy it for home media. And Discotek is facilitating that for you. What I have specifically for this criteria is a few things that are a little bit obscure, that were never really fully in the mainstream. They were always kind of those outliers that a few people appreciated, but not the whole of fandom, that have been brought back onto DVD and in some cases Blu-ray that you can buy right now from Discotek Media. First and foremost, we have Barefoot Gen. Now, this is actually sold as a combo pack, as it was back in the days of Jenny on Pioneer, the first and the second movies. Of the two, the first is, of course, the far superior one, and follows the manga of the same name in telling the story of the bombing of Hiroshima. Covers this guy named Gen, his family interactions in the days leading up to the bombing, and the immediate aftermath. It is, in many ways, a terrifying and horrible situation that is depicted for you, but it's also a very important story. If you've never had the chance to read the manga, and unfortunately the original manga creator has already passed on with leaving the extended series unfinished, I'm not sure if they're planning to finish that out with someone else or not. The movie, in many ways, acts as a capsule, a complete story. And you can view that and its sequel by going to Discotek Media. The next one on the list is The Little Prince. There are a few of you out there, and of those of you, the ones that knew about the animated stories of the New Testament are the most likely candidates to know something about this series. The Little Prince follows the titular character of the French book of the same name, The Little Prince.
Oh, so it is Le Petit Prince.
It is, and it isn't. This Little Prince takes place on an asteroid in the farthest reaches of space, where this little prince tends his garden, keeps little volcanoes from erupting on his asteroid, and takes care of this beautiful, otherworldly rose flower with a human part. And then at some point he does go to Earth and visit with the pilot that you see from the original book.
Right.
Now, here's the problem. My recollection of there was an English version of this, but I think what they did was they cut down the series of 20-some episodes into a movie format, which was readily available in several church libraries back in the day. I don't know if there was a full English dub of the series per se. And in fact, unfortunately, I don't know all the details of what was available on the new Discotek Media release. So that's something you should check out for yourself, even if it's not English dub, which is very possible, because even if there was, for example, an English dub, it might be lost to time, depending on where you're going for. But you can get the full series version of that from Discotek on DVD right now. Next up, we're going to be talking about Project A-ko. Yes, the infamous Project A-ko, that lovely OVA/movie that is so quintessential of the late 1980s and early 90s anime scene. What I'm talking about here is not the original Project A-ko. I'm talking about its sequels, Project A-ko's 2, 3, and 4, also known by the titles The Plot of the Datokuji Financial Group, The Plot of the Datakuchi Financial Group, which is number 2, Cinderella Rhapsody, and Final. All
Cinderella Rhapsody, and then the last one is Final.
It's just called Final. Yeah.
Oh, nice
Project
naming
Echo,
scheme.
Final. I have to check. I might actually own the Laserdiscs for all of those. But they are now finally available. Well, actually, I don't know this for sure. They may indeed have been available on DVD for a little bit from like Central Park Media or something. It's been quite a while since I've looked into the release history, but they're now easily and readily available in the best quality you can possibly get for this day and age on DVD from Discotek Media. So if you liked Project Echo, or if you've just recently been introduced to Project Echo, you can continue with the silliness, cheesiness, awesome goodness that is Project Echo through Project Echo 2, 3, and 4. Next up, we have Cosmo Warrior Zero. This is one of the low-key Leiji Matsumoto releases that are, connected to the major characters like Space Pirate Captain Harlock, Queen Esmeraldas, and all the rest. In fact, Harlock appears in this show. Not a lot of people knew about it when I first bought it, but right after I bought my copy of the original show many years ago for like $20, it went out of print, and next thing you know, people want to pay you like $200 for it. It's like, nope, not something like that. Too bad I didn't, because Discotek has revived the series. Discotek single-handedly has made me do more happy crying than anyone else I know, because simultaneous to making these things available for me, they are ruining my collectible value. Cosmo Warrior Zero deals specifically with a ship of the fleet that's kind of in and out fighting against Captain Harlock. They're not bad. Neither of these people are bad people. Captain Harlock's the semi-anti-hero, of course, fighting against all manner of things in the universe, ultimately on the side of humanity. But then there's this human and I forget what they call them in the series proper, but they're essentially robot men or androids. Mm-hmm. And Harlock does not like them. Harlock is a racist. Looking back on it, yeah, Harlock is a huge raging racist against robots. I never really thought of it that way. But in Cosmo Warrior Zero, this one fighting ship that's patrolling the galaxy merges those two forces together, and it's kind of about them dealing with that struggle between the concerns of the humans and the concerns of the androids, and trying to work together to perform their mission. Kind of gives you that same framework that you get in later shows like Vandred, where these two very different cultures come and clash together in order to survive.
You mean Vandred?
Vandred. And finally, the last one that I will mention out of the 5 here is Gun Frontier. This is another Matsumoto release, and it's such an oddball show in the spectrum of Leiji Matsumoto's universe, but it's a really cool concept. What you have instead of the titular Space Pirate Captain Harlock is you have Sea Captain Harlock.
Okay. And
his best friend from the show is actually a samurai, and they are showing up in the old American West. And
that's interesting.
It's essentially about them being it's almost like a spaghetti western duo story, going around busting up bad guys, and it talks a little bit about the history of, in fictional terms, about Japanese families settling in the West.
Oh.
So, semi-historical, not really, semi-historical, involving some familiar characters in a very different world from what you would normally recognize them as. It was briefly available and really hard to find for a long time on DVD, but now Discotek Media has brought that back out in a complete set that you can enjoy right now. Guys, buy from Discotek. They are the only group that is doing more right now to change the face of how we think about classic anime is Animego. Between Animego doing their reviving the concept of a Kickstarter to bring back old anime, and Discotek Media, which is literally just raining titles from above. Like, they go to Otakon, announce 20 titles, it's like, oh yeah, that's like a third of what we have in the shoot. Oh, really? Holy crap. Guys, Discotek Media and Animego are the future of saving the classic anime fandom, and you need to be a part of it. Go and buy this stuff right now. I preview this stuff all the time on our Twitter. There's other shows, of course, too, that I could be talking about, like Angel Cop, which finally came out on Blu-ray, and Violence Jack, but there's just so many. Those are the 5 that I want you to look at right now, because not only are they obscure, they're quality pieces that were almost lost to time. And you don't know how long these shows are going to be in print and available. And I've already commented about how I feel about streaming services. So look into them while they're still available. That brings us into our second discussion topic for the evening. We're going to be talking about the RomCom revival. This was all prompted by an article that we saw in, what is it, Thrillist?
The Thrillist, yeah.
The Thrillist, talking about how Crazy Rich Asians, which we've previously discussed on this podcast, and Netflix have revived the concept of the genre of rom-coms. Roxy, what exactly are we dealing with? What are they talking about? Is there something to this?
Well, I believe what we've seen is a drop-off ever since Warm Bodies was the drop-off of
Warm Bodies in
rom-coms.
2013.
Yep. And we've seen a drop-off in the genre where we don't really have any that have attained any kind of success at all. And they believe with how good Crazy Rich Asians has done, plus how Netflix has been keeping it alive with shows like
My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
My Crazy
Yeah.
Ex-Girlfriend and other things, that we are finally seeing a revival of the rom-com. And they're saying there's certain reasons why it dropped off. For one, I would say it's the oversaturation of the market. What?
Well, we did have a lot of rom-coms starting in, I'd say, probably the late 1980s.
Yes.
And the 1990s was a really big deal for rom-coms.
And that's basically the generation where we grew up, is the 1990s. The problem is, as we grew up, we started seeing the issues as a feminist purview.
Wow, you're really
instance.
like just
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna
chomping
go
at
for
the
it.
bit to just go for it. I mean, I
Yes.
thought we were going to have a little more lead into that. Holy crap.
No, we're gonna talk about it right away. So we grew up, and then we see the problems inherent in some of these movies from the 90s.
Some of them
not
are a
even
little
the
pulpy,
90s.
guys. Some of them are a little pulpy.
Not even some of the like. For instance, if you ever ask me which are the biggest rom-coms I hate, it's going to be Dirty Dancing and The Notebook. Absolutely hate it.
Are those really rom-coms?
Yes.
Huh. And I never really thought of it that way. I guess, you know what? Okay, I see what you mean about Dirty Dancing. Why do you hate Dirty Dancing?
It's because the romance is completely, absolutely, just, it doesn't work. It would never work.
Contrived?
It's contrived. They would have never actually ended up together. And
Well, if you saw Havana Nights, you know that it probably didn't.
I didn't. But that being said, we're seeing a lot of some of the old rom-coms, like either putting women into a box of, how do I say this? Bad stereotyping for women and bad stereotyping for men.
Well, I mean, what was it? Mel Gibson in What Women Want. That was all about stereotyping.
We're getting a revival of that.
I know.
Which
That's
is
why
what
I brought it
men
up.
want, which I find...
I don't know if I'm going to enjoy that or not, but it sounds intriguing.
I agree. I dislike rom-coms, but not all of them. And I see the feminist things that people see, but I don't always have the same alignment as other people. Some people are really hard on rom-coms to the point where if you even like a rom-com, it becomes like, ugh, you like that? You should know better than that. Those are just fluff pieces, and people want more real things, which I think is what leads us away from rom-coms and more into like drama.
One feminist columnist in particular that was tied to this discussion with a separate article mentioned how she in particular thought the death of rom-coms came in 2003 with Love Actually, which, by complete coincidence, one of my favorite Christmas rom-com movies.
It's actually my favorite too.
And what she was focusing on was exactly what you're talking about, how rom-coms have a tendency to have these really drab storylines that tend to foster this particular idea about how, relationships work for women, what women's attitudes are, things like that. And Love Actually apparently was particularly irksome for her in that context.
I mean, I feel like if you're going to talk about one that's particularly irksome in what females are stereotyped to be versus what the man is stereotyped to be, that would be The Notebook.
Oh my word, you're just not going to drop The Notebook, which is
I'm
a
not.
drama.
I hate The Notebook. Okay,
It
fine.
really is not a romantic comedy. I don't know how that could be a romantic comedy.
Romancing the Stone.
All right.
That's one movie
All right,
I
there you go.
really enjoy, but if you're actually going to sit down and take Romancing the Stone seriously, you have a woman who's basically just being rescued the whole time. She doesn't really do anything.
Hey, welcome to RomComs. How about Mickey Blue Eyes? Did you like Mickey Blue Eyes?
I actually haven't seen that one.
How have you never seen Mickey Blue Eyes? Have you guys seen Mickey Blue Eyes? Comment below. You need to watch Mickey Blue Eyes. Mickey Blue Eyes is one of my favorite rom-coms. It stars Hugh Grant, of course. Oh man, he was in so many.
He was in so many. But my problem is, as a kid, my mom really liked obscure rom-coms.
About a boy?
No. Have you ever heard of a movie called Blind Date?
Maybe.
Blind Date stars Bruce Willis. And
Oh boy.
his brother-in-law sets him up with this girl. And the one thing he tells him not to do is to get her drunk. And of course, that's the one thing Bruce Willis does, is he gets this girl drunk. And hijinks ensue because this girl apparently has an issue that when she gets drunk, she just goes in a complete tirade. And they have this god-awful night, but at the end of the next morning, they end up falling in love and actually, staying
Because rom-coms.
in a relationship. It's ridiculous, it's over the top, and it is essentially just a fluff piece. Another obscure one that I like is, I'm trying to remember. It's called Switched, if you've ever heard of it.
I feel like I know the title, but I couldn't tell you what it was about.
I don't remember who stars in this one, but it's about a guy, it's a womanizer who goes around, breaking women's hearts. And the very start of the movie starts off with him getting killed by his last 3 girls that he screwed over. While he's, in the process of dying, God and the devil start arguing over his soul. And they kind of go into a bet. So they throw him back on Earth as a woman, and his challenge is to make another woman fall in love with him, and then he can go to heaven.
Fantastic.
And of course, again, hijinks ensue, and it's actually a really interesting storyline. But like I said, I did watch a lot of the big name stuff that you would think of when you think of rom-coms, but my mom really introduced me into these really obscure rom-coms when I was a kid. And I've always seen them as fluff pieces.
I think it's interesting because we've already noted with the after Warm Bodies, there's a couple different movies that are listed as rom-coms that came out in that period. Mm-hmm. But I definitely don't feel like any of them stood out. It's not something that would be easily recognized as, oh yeah, I knew that movie came out, at least, if I didn't see it myself.
The problem is, I feel that the oversaturation of the rom-coms before Warm Bodies is you would see the same storyline, different characters, because essentially even Warm Bodies is just a retelling of Romeo and Juliet with zombies.
Well, rom-coms in general are formulaic by their nature. This is from the same writer who commented about Love Actually. She noted that the pendulum appears to have swung kind of in the other direction. There's a lot more interest in the what happens after. So if there's going to be rom-coms now, there seems to have been this kind of stance where it's like, what happens after? Happily ever after. Why aren't we more concerned with, after the romance fades, how do these people deal with it? How do they progress past it?
I can see the appeal to that, because even that's one of my issues with rom-coms is every rom-com has to end with a happy ending. And the thing is, okay, great, you fall in love. Everybody gets into the, not everyone, but for the most part, when you get married, it's because you really love the person that you're with. You feel like it's going to be a happy ending. You're going to commit yourself to that person for life. But at the end of the day, we know that in reality, in our country, what's the rate of divorce right now?
I have no idea because we don't officially track that data. It's all speculative. But I do think that perhaps Mr. Darcy did in fact kill his wife.
Wait, what?
RomComs,
I am really...
Pride and Prejudice, and zombies.
Oh, well, I actually haven't...
That doesn't happen in the book. I'm just making a joke.
Okay.
Ignore me.
I was very confused there for a second. You threw me for a loop.
Does the shift away from the fairy tale ending and focusing more on the future, the disenfranchisement, does that represent a maturing of our tastes?
I think it's not even so much of maturing of our taste because there's always going to be fluff movies out there. I think it's the longing to see something different and something new, a different story being told. I believe one of the authors of the article, I think it was actually the Thrillist one, talks about how it's cyclical. And I think to a point she's right. Maybe this generation just wants to see what happens after the happy ending. And we'll get a bunch of movies that talk about what happens after the happy ending. And eventually, when they grow up, they're going to be tired of seeing the aftermath of the happy ending. And they're going to go back and want to see the falling in love phase again.
But are we going to see that? We talked about this a little bit when we talked about Crazy Rich Asians a couple episodes ago. I mentioned that outside of the uniqueness of the cultural aspect, it might not have been that much of an interesting story because a lot of the hijinks, the conflicts are familiar. But that being said, we've also been teased with the fact that a lot of those concepts that people are kind of interested in elsewhere, the after story, the cynical aspect of romance, is coming. We have the adulterous husband who's going to be breaking up with her, and that's going to be part of that continuing story. We're going to have continued family conflicts and fallouts. I don't know all the details because I haven't read the sequel books, but we know it's coming.
I think we have a diverse movie-goer population, to be honest. Maybe a lot of the dreamers are streaming on Netflix, and it's probably just generational because the kids who are now young adults who would be more interested in the fairy tale ending are going to be the ones more likely to stream. But I think it's unfair to say that they won't be the ones going to the movies either. And what you mentioned earlier, that if it wasn't for the cultural differences, maybe Crazy Rich Asians wouldn't have made so much money. And I tend to agree. There was a TV show named Rob, basically named after Rob Schneider, who's married to a Mexican woman. And
Rob Schneider is a very famous American actor.
It's all about how Rob ends up having to integrate himself into the Mexican culture with his new Mexican family that's there all the time and overbearing and obnoxious. And maybe it's not great in our current political climate to really be talking about.
Especially because it's Rob Schneider.
Yes, and because it's Americans integrating into Mexican culture. But I find it...
He wears the sombreros and eats the tacos.
So, like, Crazy Rich Asians makes it big for having their culture, being the purview of the movie, the whole movie, but not the Mexican culture didn't seem to bridge that gap. Rob being the older example and How to Be a Latin Lover being the most recent example of that. Because without that cultural view...
It's not interesting.
It's no longer that interesting.
Okay, I see what you're getting at. Recap. We'll agree with the headline to a certain extent that RomComs had a drop-off after 2013. In fact, they were probably on the downturn even before that. I don't know if I would argue that was 2003's Love Actually, but some people feel that way.
I don't think it was that one.
And
I
I
think
guess
it was The Notebook.
I guess we're oh my god. The Notebook. So,
bane of my existence.
I guess about a 5-year gap before another hugely successful rom-com comes back onto the screen. And even honestly before that, it's not like Warm Bodies was making gobs of money, but it is a easily recognizable romantic comedy. So perhaps Crazy Rich Asians is set to bring the rom-com back onto the screen, but that's the question. I don't know if that is sustainable. I don't know if we're going to see rom-coms come back to the big screen. Outside of that
need
series.
a gimmick. I think that was the point I was making earlier, is they need more than just the romance. You need to have...
Not just random white people on two different sides of the country. But I think it's clear the ultimate solution to bringing back rom-coms. Tom Hanks needs to star in a sequel of Big. I have harped on this for years. I want to see the aged Tom Hanks play the starring role in a movie called Small, where the cynical, post-romance version of Tom Hanks' child character finds Zoltar because there was a Zoltar in the Colossal Con East Kalahari.
There was a Zoltar.
And he gets it, and it turns him back to youth. And
That's a lot of CGI to be...
No. We just bring in a different kid to play him, and then we go through the same strokes, but in inverse. And he learns about how it's okay to grow old and be mature, and you don't have to fawn after the lost hopes of youth because it's okay. I wrote a brilliant synopsis of this on my Facebook at many years ago. I'm like, yeah, I want that movie made. That could bring back the rom-com.
Well, I mean, considering we were just talking about how possibly the issue is we are becoming too cynical for the rom-coms, that would work.
Yeah, seriously. Someone pitch this to a studio. You don't even need credit me. I don't need money. I want a sequel to Big, starring Tom Hanks. Come on, he's still out there. He's making movies. Bridge of Spies wasn't that good, but there's a lot of other ones that he's made that are pretty awesome.
You know, I'll just be honest. I think, for me, we just need to be okay with fluff is okay sometimes.
Oh, no, I completely agree with you.
Not everything has to be super serious all the time.
But pulp is not what is banking all the bucks these days.
No, unfortunately
like, they're going for
not.
those tentpole films. So, I mean, like, we gotta get something. And I think maybe it's Tom Hanks. Let's do it. It wouldn't be unprecedented. We're getting all these other weird sequels years after the fact.
Oh,
like,
yeah, like
what men want.
Or like the reboot of Overboard.
That's true. We stumbled through that recap. Now it's time to head into our final segment of the show tonight, and that's pretty cool. This one comes from Rockstar. Take it away.
All right, so tonight we're going to be talking about Don Bluth's production company. But still, Don Bluth. So, of course, we know what we know him for. Anastasia, Land Before Time, all those nice little classics.
Check out Drawing Mrs. Brisby, the animation career of Don Bluth, hosted by Manly Battleships at a convention near you.
Now, this particular fun fact is something that I just happened to stumble upon while was actually watching a YouTube series about defunct amusement park rides.
Go figure.
Come to find out that Universal asked Don Bluth's production to put together animation for this ride that was called The Futuristic World of Hanna-Barbera. The reason they got a hold of Don Bluth's production company is, one, the initial people that were supposed to work on it kind of fell through the cracks halfway through the production. And two is because they wanted the Hanna-Barbera characters to be classically animated. And we know Don Bluth that's basically what he was famous for.
And it's also something that they would have experience with at that point from working that animation into arcade games.
Mm-hmm. So, essentially, the kind of amusement park ride that they built was something called a simulator ride, which is essentially you have the movie playing and all the seats correspond with the movement.
Like the old Star Wars ride at Disneyland, which I think they finally took out, but that was always a good one for me.
I think this was the first one at this particular Universal. I think
Probably.
This was Universal Florida. That ride was at Universal from June 1990 until October 2002. Now, just because the ride is gone from Universal doesn't mean you can't actually go and see this. There are pieces of the movie left over on YouTube. I think there's one that's about 3 minutes long, so clearly not the entire movie. But it's not gone forever, and you can definitely see a lot of Don Bluth's work in it, even though I believe he wasn't actually
personally overseeing it.
Yeah, it was I believe one of the other, I forget the name of the person, but it was the company that he had. The other thing is, if you want to know what it was replaced with, eventually got replaced with Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast. And
Fantastic.
Currently, the ride that is there is Despicable Me Minion Mayhem.
Of course it is. Minion Mayhem.
Minion Mayhem. So yeah, if you are up to seeing Hanna-Barbera through Don Bluth's animation style, I would go on YouTube and try to give it a look.
And that's pretty cool. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our time here at Of Duelists and Drunkards. Also, I am out of fluid, but we hope that you've enjoyed the time spent together this evening as much as we have. We hope that you'll continue to follow us, see our work elsewhere, check out our Facebook and our Twitter, mash that subscribe button, leave a comment below to let us know that you're enjoying it. And most importantly, we hope that you have a good evening. Hear from Mr. Panda.
And Rockstar.
And just remember, this is the podcast where there are not any duelists, but there are plenty of drunkards.
Bye-bye!